Hi everyone. So today I'll be talking about a particular incident of disaster relief support and adaptation help for especially school children, young learners from the Vembanad region. For context, I'll be talking about the 2018 floods in Kerala. Kerala is a southern state in India, and um, and this is a particular flood that was one of the worst of its kind in recent history, and it took the lives of over 600 plus people, and it widely affected the whole state. I'll be talking about a particular effort, which is a minute effort among the various disaster relief and adaptation work that was done by various agencies and government and public across the state, with support from people from across the country as well as international support coming in. This is one particular post disaster recovery effort that we were doing um, after the 2018 floods, and and essentially here we brought in multiple organizations together to purchase and procure school bags as a kit for children and young learners who lost literally everything in the floods from this particular region in Alapura, which is part of the Vembanad Cold Ramsar site. Vembanad Cold Ramsar site is a place also called as backwaters of Alapura, which provides livelihood to almost 1.5 million people through um, fisheries, clam collection, tourism, agriculture in a lot of regions, especially paddy cultivation. And this was also one of the most affected regions because while some areas got flooded and the water did wash away with immediately within 1 or 2 days of the draining of water happened, but Alapura and several parts of the region was flooded and stayed like that for almost 5 to 10 days, and several houses were washed off. There were incidences where certain houses could not be used at all after the floods because pretty much most of the house was flooded, and we have lost people have lost everything in the house. And it was Mr. Shabirish, an IRS officer, who discussed. I mean, at this point, a lot of organizations, individuals were doing relief work and thinking of relief, especially those people affected. I mean, those organizations and groups which are not affected, and regions which were not affected. For example, Trivandrum was not as affected as other parts of the state, and there was a lot of work being done in Trivandrum in terms of coordination. It was also the capital of Kerala. It's also the capital of Kerala, so because of which a lot of work was happening from Trivandrum. And um, in the early relief period, a lot of people, youth organization groups, NGOs, corporate companies came together. They're setting up relief camps across the state. Especially in Trivandrum, there was a lot of collection points led by the collector itself, and the municipal corporation in Trivandrum. Um, Deepa, who's one of my co-founders, was coordinating one of these collection points as well. There were a lot of interactions happening because there was need for large trucks required to travel to these places which were affected due to the extreme weather event that happened, and uh, um, uh, and lot of food and lot of relief material came in flights as well in Trivandrum from various parts of the country and outside the country, and it was being coordinated. Trivandrum acted as a hub to coordinate these relief efforts because Kochi and Thrissur was completely paralyzed. Kochi and Thrissur are regions which are also like the financial capital or financial area, and most of the city of these regions were paralyzed because of extreme flood. um, and this was one particular effort where after the the the, the after immediately after the disaster, And after a few days passing on, Mr. Shabarish, an IRS officer, suggested that now that the schools are going to reopen, it's important that we provide um, the school children the support, emotional support, as well as the um, financial support or material support required for them to go back to schools and start studying, because they shouldn't feel bad or down. They need to be mentally stable, and we need to provide that kind of support for them. And one of the suggestions that came was, if we can mobilize enough school bags and as a school kit with some books, notebooks, and pencils, and their basic kit and water bottle, tiffin box, etc., together, so that we can make this available for children, especially from this particular wetland region which got extensively affected. And and for this, as soon as Mr. Sapirish told this to Ganesh, one of the founders of CDI, he contacted us, me and Deepa, saying, "Okay, can we work on this?" Because by then the post disaster recovery efforts were like sort of subsiding, when then we started to also help in adaptation. And for the next 2 months, a lot of organizations worked on helping them cope up and build back and bring back, faster, and build resilience and recoup and get back to normal business. And this is the time when we got on a call and then quickly decided, okay, we'll mobilize enough resources to sort of support the families, especially children, with these kits, because it is quite crucial, and schools have started to reopen. And uh, um, what we essentially did was, we just put out a poster using Canva, saying that, okay, these are the organizations coming together. We are pulling enough funds to buy these kits, and we found wholesale sellers. In this case, Ramachandran from Trivandrum, which is textile, which said that they will give it a very subsidized price without taking any profit margin. So, and they said they will provide the bags at a very subsidized price. And we went across, and through social media, through our friends and family, we quickly targeted to bring in at least 200 back such kits. And and quickly people around volunteered. And um, within our community of the Save Rupees Spread a Smile NGO, that we had already, along with um, the people in our immediate circle, and Sonu, my wife, who already was running ITAL, which is yet another group, which is a group of CETians, a college alumni that contributed to such social causes. So immediately we pulled in resources to procure bags. Initially, it was just 100, 200 that sets of these bags that we were able to procure. But immediately, within a few hours of starting discussion, people donated enough money and resources to procure around 800 plus kits. And one of a friend who had um, SUV, um, I think it's a Toyota Prado or something, agreed to come along with us from Trivandrum, because even now the roadways towards these regions were flooded, because of which he agreed to come along. So from Trivandrum all the way, in such 2 3 SUVs, we pulled in all the bag, took it to A3 office, Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and Environment. It's a Bangalore-based think tank working on conservation. They have set up a center almost 20 years before to in conservation of Vembanad wetland, participatory conservation of Vembanad wetland. And I have worked there in their schools project for a very long time, where we focused on habitat education. So I personally had worked in almost 40 schools for almost 2 years, so I knew what the situation is and to be providing support. So quickly we use that space to collect all the bags, and get the relief material in the office in Alapura city, and then uh, collected batch by batch. We took these bags to various schools, and a lot of these schools were not functional then. We found the teachers, we brought in young learners and the children together, um, and talked to them, try to understand what they're going through. It was not easy because they haven't never seen such a thing in their past. They lost a lot of their belongings. Um, and even though the rapid response was efforts were good, it it took its own time because Kerala was seeing something of the sort for the first time in a very long period. And a lot of humanitarian relief was happening, but still that was not enough. Whatever we did was not enough. I mean, this was, as I said, this was just a tiny drop in the ocean of relief that happened. But essentially, here, what happened is, in such disaster situation, one, it's important to have climate finance in advance, or disaster finance that can provide relief immediately when there is a issue. Um, it wouldn't make, I mean, clear sense if we do it when there is a disaster. So it's important that finance is made ready in advance, and also such relief efforts are coordinated in a very networked fashion, where there are multiple organizations coming together to do this rather than just one organization working by its own. Because in this case, CDI brought in the idea, Sestera and Sarsus pulled in resources quickly with the network it had, circulated the message because Sestera and Sarsus had its own tribes or community that they had, and circulated the message. People pulled in, and A3 was there to identify the schools that required support, and also provided a space for putting up all the necessary items there, and keeping it in a stored um, there, and also contacting schools and teachers who could coordinate with us in ensuring that the relief reaches the right people and communities and children that required support. In the process, we also try to understand what is the emotional and psychological support that is required for young learners going ahead. And later on, there was some effort from A3 to provide emotional support, which A3 had developed for the camps, relief camps, because a lot of children were in relief camps for a very long time, especially in Alapura. And I remember Manija, telling about how she did. Manija, who works with A3, had mentioned how she did various fun games to get them, provide the psychological support and child-centered recovery effort that is required. Um, because it wouldn't be just enough to provide material support of food, but also that psychological support to recoup and rebuild confidence, be able to think better, to be able to act normal, to be able to have hope in life. So this was a very small effort in terms of loss and damage support, which is non-economic in manner, but I hope it helped a few families, certainly children, because certainly buying a whole school kit is going to cost at least between 800 to 1000 rupees um, for them. And at that particular point, it would have been difficult. But essentially, when a disaster happens, one, it's important for non-government organizations who already know that such areas are vulnerable, prone to disasters, to have a plan in place in terms of the numbers and contact details of how we can quickly mobilize resources. Having that community and maintaining that community who can support when we know there is an issue is also crucial. Um, in Kerala, though, after 2018 disasters, we have the disaster management plan for every local body, every local self-government institution has a disaster management plan. And in the plan, there are very interesting details that the local body has to compile in terms of how many trucks are there, who are the who can support in when a disaster strikes. They have a detailed note on adaptation, like how it can be done after a disaster or pre-disaster. Um, so I feel, um, because of climate change impacts, um, children and elderly are mostly the ones affected, and it's important to have plans that provide social protection in for them in times of such a crisis. This was just a small example of how we mobilized a lot of volunteers and pooled in money for support. Uh, but but in future, it's important to be prepared in advance, and also see to that how we can do it in a frugal manner, innovative manner, using minimal resources, using contacts of friends and family, to be able to provide support, especially in terms of floods, which which can be very unpredictable in terms of the in depth of what it can cause. So yeah, such models to scale is also required, and we need more people to be trained in being able to do um, such a thing when something happens, to quickly take action without waiting, and also to find collaborations to be able to do something of this sort. Yeah, so I'll pause there. I hope this was helpful, and do share if you think has been helpful.